Okay, so here we go. We're going to start off with the first learning aim, which is all about obviously modern teams. Okay, so here we go. So the first one we're going to go through is called ad hoc networks. Now, ad hoc networks are basically networks that are wirelessly set up without any sort of complex hardware in there. So this is stuff like a hotspot, for instance, as an example. The next one is open networks. So these are open networks. These are related to ad hoc networks because open networks allow us to access the Wi-Fi wherever without using any sort of encryption key or any sort of Wi-Fi passwords or anything like that. The next one is rural. So when you start thinking about rural, if the exam question says something about rural, we're talking about the countryside. Okay, so for instance, in specific countries, they might not have the infrastructure to get the signals or the network signals out into rural parts. The next one is infrastructure. So I've just touched on it before. Infrastructure, this is basically the hardware required to set up a network. Now this could be using 4G and trying to connect to the big network pylons that are dotted in and around the country, or it could be something like a school server or a school network that allows us to connect wirelessly or wired into the network itself. The next one is tethering. This enables devices basically to share the internet. So this is us having the ability to, like it says there, to connect from 4G from your phone to your laptop. Okay, yeah. The next one is cloud computing. Now, cloud computing is being able to save and use applications online. So, for instance, if we were to use a PowerPoint, for instance, we can use a PowerPoint on the desktop app, which is classed as the traditional way, or we can do it online, which is going to be the application part. Okay, so that is cloud computing. All right. The next one is cloud storage, and cloud storage basically allows you to store your information online on data servers. So we can store images, store stuff on iClouds, all that kind of stuff. Okay, the next one is access rights. So this is if we were to have access rights for different companies or different people, we could have we could set people up. So for instance, in school, we have got access rights. So students can only see your work only. Staff will be able to see all students' work, and then the administrators or the technicians can see everybody. Okay. Here's another keyword called synchronization, and this is basically where when files are saved on your device. So if you take a picture on your phone and you are connected to the iCloud, it will save it on your device, and then what it will then do is it will then transfer it up into the cloud as like a backup. Okay, this can happen when you connect to the internet. So again, if you were taking a picture in a rural area and you didn't have internet connection, when your phone next connected to the internet, it would then automatically sync up or synchronize up to the cloud. This next one, scalability. So this is having cloud storage, enabling us to, if we want to get more storage, for instance, we can make it even bigger. Okay, we can also scale it up, but also normally in these big companies and especially like say Microsoft and iClouds and stuff, you will be allowed to keep a free version, which will be the real basic amount of data, or you can scale it right up and maybe get a terabyte of data, for instance, but then you will have to pay for that. Okay, consistency. Now this is us making sure that we have the same consistency throughout all of our networks. So this is basically a recurring pattern or theme that will evolve around creating the same rules and regulations and the same connection techniques for the same kind of device. So for instance, an example there would be to follow the same login, log-on procedures and set rules. That comes down to the acceptable users policy or user policy, and we're going to go through that later on. This next one is versions. Okay, so this is basically where we can save different, or we can have some files that have different versions to them. So for instance, we can see the development of a specific document. So if we are working together, for instance, we are able to work on one document, so we can see our progress from lesson 1 to lesson 5, and we can see that by using different versions. Another example, like it says there, is updating your PlayStation software to support the newest version, to get the latest piece of software, to get the latest security features, all that kind of stuff in terms of our modern teams. The next one is file types. So file types allows us, where it says there, it says various applications save files as different forms of data. So for instance, a .doc, which is based here, this .doc is, .doc is basically a document, like a Word document. Then we've got a JPEG, which is obviously an image, PNG, image, all these kind of things. You can kind of see where we're going with this. PPT, it's obviously a PowerPoint, MP3, which is music, and these are saved as different file types. So we've got this idea of a single shared instance. So this is basically where multiple copies can replace by one shared copy. So for instance, if we put it in, say, the shared, we put it in, say, the cloud, for instance. Once we put it in the cloud, we are then allowed to then work on it together, and we can edit that same copy, so we've got just one working copy instead of having multiple copies saved locally on different computers. This is good because obviously if I make changes, I want other people to see them changes so they don't make the same thing twice. Collaboration. So collaboration is where we can work together, like I said before, to complete the same tasks. And this could use Microsoft Teams to basically create, to edit, to manipulate, to change various documents, okay? And we can do that live, or we can do that when, say if I'm in Japan and someone else is in the UK and there's different time zones, we can do it as and when we need to. Okay, so we've got here complexity of features. So this is basically the level of detail that the features that we can have in terms of a device. So for instance, a PDA or like a tablet will have less functionality compared to say a desktop computer or laptop. So again, it's all dependent on what the company's doing, depends on what kind of device they need. Okay, so we've got this idea between traditional and digital. Now, when we start looking into traditional and digital, the traditional way of storing data is to save it on your local hard drive, which is fine. But now the new way, the modern way, is to synchronize it up to the cloud. Okay? So again, like it says there, is what is the normal way of doing things. So the normal way of saving information is to save it on your hard drives. Notifications, okay, so these things called notifications, these allow us to see what's changed. So if I have been on a document and someone else is wanting to know what's happening, they can actually see what I've done via using these notifications. Okay, so the security of data. So this is basically making sure that the data that is used is secure. And this is basically protecting it from being hacked, damaged or stolen. And this is stuff like having passwords in place, biometric stuff like maybe Face ID, fingerprint ID, all these things. And these can all be done really, really easily, but it's a standard now. So for instance, I've got an iPhone and I use Face ID. And my Face ID, if my phone doesn't see my face, it will then not basically turn up and it will basically not allow you to log into my computer or my phone. Okay, so security procedures. These security procedures are basically sets of rules that we can protect our data. So a procedure is basically a set of rules, something that we've got to do over and over again. And if someone else uses the same procedure, they will do the same thing over and over again. Okay? These are stuff like policies, making sure that people have their own login details, making sure that people understand how to keep safe on the computers. This word compatibility. So compatibility is basically whether something will work correctly. So for instance, if we were to use a piece of software on a laptop, is that compatible with, say, an iPad, for instance? Or is that compatible with a mobile phone? If not, then we need to make sure that we use the correct piece of software. Maintenance. So this idea of maintenance, making sure that our computer is maintained, making sure that everything is correct, making sure that we use the computers in a correct manner. But when we start looking at maintenance, it might need maybe dusting to make sure that there's no dust in the back of the sort of fans inside of a desktop computer. Also, maybe something called a disk defragmentation to make sure that the computer is running at its full capacity. Okay, so performance issues or considerations. These are basically where, depending on what you want to use, depends on what operating system, what software you use, what devices you use. So if a graphic designer would want to use a desktop computer, they would need to make sure they have got real good graphics, a lot of RAM in the computers to make it nice and fast. And if they didn't have that, they would not be able to do their job properly. Alternatively, if you're working in, say, a supermarket, you don't really need to have that much of a powerful computer. All you need is just a database that will link back into a main server. Okay, thank you.